Hey guys, it's Roderick and I'm here for another review of The White Lotus Season 2, Episode 3, Bull Elephant. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you, like White Lotus is really working my nerves and about to lose me, which is really a substantial disappointment because for such a great season one was, this season is really falling flat for me. And I think that this is really one of the cases where, now I understand that there's a difference between nuanced storytelling and writing a show just thinking your writing is so fucking great. I really think that White Lotus thinks that it's the former, but it's really doing the latter. And that is really kind of relying on the location and kind of like a lot of great scenery and cinematography to really carry the show when they have really great characters, but there's not anything happening. There's no external or really existential conflict. Like really, all of the characters you have in season 2 are pretty much a lot of the same types of characters that we had in season 1. You could swap out Aubrey Plaza's character with Connie Britton's character. You could switch out Albie for the Connie Britton's son. Like we're just literally swapping out all the same types of characters and putting them in a new location, and we're not getting any type of dynamic conflict. I mean, there's nothing that's really drawing us in and really getting us invested in these stories or in the character's path. Like, I think you have such interesting characters, and I'm totally okay with knowing what their endpoint destination is going to be, but at least make the journey interesting, and they're not making it interesting, which makes the destination so much more frustrating, because if you're going to give me a predictable character arc, let that journey really be something novel, right? And it really kind of seems to be like recently a lot of these HBO shows are really going for this kind of high concept visual, but kind of low on the character type of drama. Like everyone's trying to be like a Big Little Lies, when what you need to do is go back to the basics and be more like The Sopranos, more like The Wire, more like Sex and the City. Give us a good story. Give us interesting characters, and we're going to stick around and watch. Because quietly, HBO's on thin ice because of the whole Game of Thrones fiasco anyway, right? Yes, House of Dragon is good, but that's not going to make up for my 7 seasons that I went through with Game of Thrones, and then you gave me bullshit at the end, right? Quit trying to get people sucked in by this kind of subscription service, people buying into universes or multiple seasons if you just tell me a good story, right? Like really, it makes me question whether or not a season 1 was really a second season was really necessary, because if the only character you're bringing back is Tanya, and you're trying to create this universe of White Lotuses or White Lotus hotels and properties, then make it worth the while, right? Make it be something different and interesting. And it's just really smelling like HBO got all these Emmys, and they're like, oh, people really liked it. And instead of just doing a George Costanza from Seinfeld, going out on top, they just decided, oh, okay, we'll do a second season. And they're really not, giving us anything. Now, I say this with reservation that episode 4 may just blow me out my seat, and episode 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 may just be so great that I'll be like, I will be the first to come back and be like, you know what? I was wrong. Boo on me. Here are my apologies. But we'll see, right? So the most interesting, instead of going like chronologically, like whatever, I'm going to group this up by character and character clusters, because it literally makes it more interesting, so you can really see what is going on and what is not going on with this show and with this episode. Because one of the most interesting characters is Valentina, right? She comes on very strong in the beginning. She's no bullshit. She's in charge. But yet we see that her daily routine is her being like low-key sexually harassed, right, by the men in the coffee shop, and she goes to work and she has this lazy, shiftless staff. Like Rocco is continually fucking around with this other chick, at the thing, instead of doing his job. And then we see, she spends her lunches like eating by herself with her like homemade lunch, and she's feeding the cats. And then when an employee comes up and says, you know what, you're an inspiration to me, I really like how hard you're working, you see Valentina almost in tears, because no one really recognizes the hard work that she does. She has to put up these demanding, super crazy staff, a lazy, crazy clients, right? Lazy staff, and no one really recognizes her. And so we get a glimmer of what it's really like to be Valentina. We want more Valentina, right? Especially if Valentina is going to be very different from the manager we saw last episode, right? Or last season, really. So again, I really like what we got glimpses of Valentina, right? And also, but I also, as you get to the end of the episode, what they're trying to do kind of with this show, the difference between men and women, I think they totally failed on that, right? Like, I'm just going to get this out the way. The whole bull elephants and the fact of like women feeling bad for men and how men are just out here alone, competitively, whatever. You could have saved that, right? Like, honestly, I'm just going to say you just could have saved that because nobody really believes that, right? And maybe there are white people in this world who really think and move like that, but they really don't, right? I think white women are happy being white women and white men are happy being white men, and everybody else is just scratching and surviving, doing the best that they can. So again, that's going to be all I say about bull elephants or whatever. Now, let's go to the whores and Lucia, right? Because they are very interesting because they serve as kind of like the instigators or provocateurs for a lot of the conflict. It's, especially we're seeing Lucia being kind of like the agent of conflict for Dom and who's trying to be more faithful to his wife, because I'm saying he's a sex addict because I'm not really buying that. Like, he just hasn't shown any addictive behavior. If he was a sex addict, he would have been fucking more people besides Lucia. Like, or he would have been jerking off in the middle of the day. Like, they've done nothing to really establish that Dom is a sex addict. What they've established is Dom is a fuckboy, right? So anyway, but they're really interesting people because they kind of serve to be the kind of provocateurs, and also they have very interesting stories because we see Mia, who's like the hoe in training, but is she not the hoe in training? Does she wants to be a singer, but she doesn't want to do the work to be a singer. So now she's like thinking about maybe fucking a piano player. And I'm like, if we're going to do hoe lessons, give us some hoe lessons, right? Because, and also if they're going to do sex work shit and hoe ass shit, show us the hoe ass shit, because sex work is work too, right? I always see is them flitting about, shopping, spending up Dom's money, and nobody's getting fucked. No one's having to wash their coochie after they're doing it. It's kind of like this kind of glamorizing work of sex work, when really, like, them and Portia are on the bottom of this whole totem pole or this caste system, and nobody's really seeing the hard work or heavy lifting that's going on, right? So anyway, and it's not in a way to kind of exploit women or being like, but it's sex work, right? Like, there should be some work involved, right? Because Mia, she wanted half of what she got from the whole Dom fiasco. Then Lucille was like, well, girl, I'm the one who fucked him. She's like, well, I would have fucked him. So she's pretty much, if you want some money, you need to get some pussy in this game. I would rather the hoes be giving us every lesson ho tips than kind of like just kind of flitting around. But anyway, I think it's kind of like, whatever. I like the hoes. So that's pretty much all of the good points so far of this episode. So let's get to the bullshit, or like the most frustrating parts of this episode. Now, let's start off with Tanya and Portia, okay? Tanya, we know her for her ways, and we know her for her works. We know exactly the type of bullshit that she typically is on. What the show does is put Portia in the mix to really show you that Portia is where Tanya began and Tanya is where Portia will end. Because both are these very self-indulgent, kind of narcissistic, self-involved, entitled white women who may have gone through some kind of traumatizing events in their life, but don't know how to pull their head from their asses and fucking make it do what it do, right? Like, if you place, who the fuck complains about life being boring as you're eating for free in a 5-star hotel in Sicily, right? Who the fuck lets your man get up and pack up away and leave for 2 days in a hotel on a vacation that he henpecked you up for, and you go lay in the bed like a little child and hide? I would have been gone. I'd be like, okay, bye, whatever. So they're both literally on that same trajectory, and we kind of see exactly where one point starts, where one point ends. And I think that's interesting, especially when Tanya tries to warn Portia of stop chasing after emotionally unavailable men, which is a lesson I will tell you that you will not, that if you start in your 20s and you don't get it, you will continue it to be it. As a person who used to chase after emotionally unavailable men, I can tell you that if you do not get it, you will keep repeating the same lesson. But like most people Tanya's age or Portia's age, she doesn't get the lesson. So instead of wanting to be with Albie, who may be a little less boring, less aggressive, right? She'd rather be with Pool Bro, who's just gonna blow her back out, and then she's gonna catch feelings, and then he's gonna do her dirty, and then she's gonna have something else to cry for that really was her own doing, right? So I do find that to be, I do like that, and I do see that, but the whole season can't be us getting a glimpse of what Portia's going to be, and Tanya's on her like kind of like bullshit or whatever, because Tanya goes and gets a fortune teller to tell her her future or whatever, because she really doesn't want a fortune teller. She wants someone to tell her that she didn't make a mistake marrying Greg, that her marriage is going to be okay, and that he really loves her, right? Which is pretty much what she says. The fortune teller tells us what we all know. He's fucking somebody else, and she's really pretty, okay? So Tanya throws a fit, and then the fortune teller sees something else in the cards, and they don't translate it or they don't say what it is in closed captions, so we really don't get an idea of what it is. And more than likely, it's who's going to be murdered or all the bad things are about to happen at the White Lotus. But of course, we don't say that. So Tanya throws the fortune teller out. This is of course after she sent Portia to go waiting in the bathroom. And I'm just kind of like, all of Tanya hysterics, like we don't get a sense of, like, Portia's like, I need to find another job. So clearly she's not getting paid enough money to put up with Tanya's bullshit, because that has to be the only reason one will put up with Tanya's bullshit, right? So I just, again, maybe it's just the age and stage and the trajectory of my life, my career. All of this Tanya whooping me about her bullshit, I just have very little patience for, because in this day and age, girl, you can find you a new job, right? And she ain't doing that much for you not being able to do that, right? But whatever, right? Different strokes, different folks, different lessons. So that's the kind of Tanya thing. So we go to Albie, Dom, and Nano, right? Which is pretty much a male version of the Portia and Tanya relationship, because they're all steps, right? Albie, Dom, Nano. Albie will be Dom. Dom's going to end up being Nano. We get that. Just make it more interesting. I thought the whole Godfather thing was really good, because we did see him watching it the night when Dom had the whores in. And I do kind of, as much as I don't enjoy crotchety old people, I did enjoy the fact of Nano continually keeping his foot low-key on Dom's neck about his hoe-ass ways, which I think is totally fine, right? If you're talking about, oh, I'm so sad, I miss my wife and daughter, then you can't be having low-key threesomes in your hotel room and then crying over me and my pasta the next motherfucking day, ruining my breakfast, right? Either you're going to do it or you're not, which is pretty much what Albie says to his father. It's like, there's nothing that you could do to fix this. So then he starts on the fuckboy parade song of, I'm going to try, I'm trying to change, whatever. And the key lesson is in this, another second lesson in life, there's no such thing as trying, right? Either you're doing or you don't. Those are the only two states of existence. You're doing something or you're not doing something. Trying is not a state of existence, right? Either you're doing it or you're not. So Dom starts his whole fuckboy mantra or whatever, and Albie's just like, okay. Mind you, Dom tells the whores at the beginning of the episode, okay, I'm trying to change, I want to be a good person, gives them €3,000 and kicks them away. Mind you, that kind of fucks up, Lucia's whore plan, because she had planned to be, fucking Dom all weekend, getting her money, but now she has to find a new trick, and Mia ain't being helpful because she's just a hoe in training. Like, she's looking at the piano player, thinking if she's going to give up her pussy to the piano player or not. And, Lucia's like, girl, I got to work. You know what I'm saying? Like, we want these dresses. They're buying new dresses. Ain't nobody, like, I missed a Sharon Stone type of whore who, like, kept 20, get 20 and then put the 80 in her little sack, okay? Like, these hoes just spin it up all they doing, right? So that's a long lot of fucking, that's a lot of miles you gotta put in your pussy if you ain't stashing that away, right? So anyway, finally the whores, do kind of come up, at the end of the episode. But I do want, but I do like the Dom and Albie and Nano diamond or triad, but it still is just, I want more. Like, I want more. Give me more. Give me something interesting. Like, it just can't be these, like, that Albie's going to eventually should be like his dad. And I get that, but just make the journey far more interesting, and they're not doing it because there's no conflict, right? Ultimately, what I'm saying is there is no dynamic or interesting conflict presented to any of these characters. And you cannot run a show or a whole season on internal conflict, right? So anyway, that's what I'll say about that. Now, let's get the most interesting parts, right? The parts that were like, so we get first Harper and Daphne, right? Now, they have really beat us over the head the first two episodes. The Harper is this critical thinking, really smart, headstrong, lawyer, female attorney who really kind of, sees the world as it really is, right? Whereas Daphne is this kind of like pampered, luxurious, kind of social, I want to call her socialite, rich white woman, right? And her like, specious husband, okay? Now, if that's what they're telling us and that's what they're showing us, then if the character is changing or moving towards it, we need to see something that is realistic that will make the character's next step be more dynamic. For example, Daphne wants to go to Noto. Cam is selfish and doesn't want to go to Noto. Daphne goes, fine, I'll go to Noto by myself. Harper, who, by the way, I don't know if I would even fuck with a friend like Harper, because I don't like people who do things for you and then let you know what the cost of the sacrifice is, right? Now, either you're not going to do something you don't want, or you're going to do it and just do it just for the sake of being nice and decent person, right? So if you're going to like make the trip more minimal for being a nice person, Harper and her like shit-eating grins and her like Wednesday, like bad Wednesday, Christina Ricci, Wednesday Addams like thing, just would have irked the dog fuck out of me. I'd have like sent her home. Like literally on day 2, I'd have sent her like, just go fuck home, right? Like I don't need this or whatever. So anyway, Harper's on her like, we're gonna be more minimal, like leaning in and kind of like improv of life, yes and type of thing. So Harper's leaning in and doing that, and Daphne kind of low-key rubs her going to Noto, which is fine because the guys can hang out and go jet skiing. So we find out that Daphne has already kind of rented this whole palazzo because she likes staying at fabulous things and doing rich bitch shit. Who doesn't, right? Harper's one like, I didn't know we're staying. I ain't got nothing to wear. And I'm like, bitch, you can find you. She's like, oh, I bought you some toothpaste or whatever. And Daphne's like, yeah, I got you something. I got an extra briefcase. And, we find out that this is the game that Daphne and Cameron play, right? That when she gets mad, she spends his money. Okay, fine. Typical white woman shit. Nice. But at least we're tracking with Daphne. Like, they were like, okay, whatever. Mind you, they get high, they take an edible, they go out for drinking, and Harper's trying to really get under the facade, so she thinks of Daphne. And the fact is, there's nothing left. That Daphne just isn't a super deep person. Like, every person you meet isn't some vacuous, like, container of like life philosophies and substance. Some people are just shallow pint people. You have gallon people and you have pint people. That pretty much is, that's all there is in the world, right? So quit thinking everybody, if you're a gallon person, that every person you meet is going to be a gallon person. Because most people are just pint people. And Daphne's a pint person who's happy with her pintness, right? So we get to asking like, Daphne's like, Harper's like, do you think that, Cam cheats on him? She's like, maybe once, that I know of, right? And then Daphne quickly says, don't feel sorry for me, Argentina. Like, don't cry. You don't have to cry for me. I'm not a victim. And then Harper's like, oh, okay. And I guess they're trying to make us believe that because she's under the influence of this edible and whatever, she's now going to try to question, whether or not Ethan is being faithful. We see her calling Ethan and then Ethan not answering and her kind of questioning what's going on. And I call bullshit on that, right? Because how are you going to let one bitch who you don't known for like 3 days get in your ear and make you think your husband's cheating on you? When all time is, Ethan and I don't do this. This is what Ethan and I do. This is what, da. So the whole time you've known what your marriage is, you've known what your relationship is all about, but all of a sudden one dizzy bitch on an edible that makes you like rethink your whole motherfucking marriage? Like for real? Like Ethan has not done anything to make us believe that he is cheating on Daphne. Nothing we have seen, nothing Daphne has seen. So why are you gonna be a dizzy bitch on an edible thinking your husband's cheating on you? Once again, I was like, okay, especially when the show has done a lot to make us believe that Harper is this type of character. They're, like, again, in real life, people do dizzy, dumb shit for no reason, but in storytelling, you have to show your work, right? And I'm just not seeing the work with Harper. Now, the second most interesting thing about this show is the Ethan and Cameron dynamic. Because again, we know what the endpoints were gonna be, but it made it kind of interesting getting there because we finally get Cameron's big ask, okay? Because we find out that Cameron's in finance, it's probably some hedge fund, mutual fund, investing, stock portfolio, whatever. But, you know, the real ask is that he wants a portion of Ethan's money to invest and work with. So this is not necessarily a fringe trip as opposed to a business development outing, right? So now we get to see the difference in perspectives. Cameron has been sure, has like, okay, I'm going to take my friend from college who just got all this money, you know, I'm going to take him out because the amount of money I spend on this trip, I'm going to make back up in the commission from from investing his money, right? Which is that's a business development trip, okay? Ethan thinks this is just a friend from college who wants to reconnect with him, but Harper has already warned him he's going to ask for something. So at least we got the big ask. And I really was like, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Which is why Daphne's there, which is why the whole thing of, okay, we get the thing. But we also see what kind of person Cameron is because he then gets kind of low-key salty with Ethan that Ethan did not tell him about the buyout. And Ethan's like, I can't do that. That's insider trading. He's like, that's kind of like how things work in my industry, whatever. So we see that Cameron and Ethan's relationship has been very much like this Mia Lucia, old hoe, new hoe, right? Cameron's all constantly giving Ethan the ways of kind of, this is the way the world is. And Ethan being either resistant or unable to really keep up with the step of the music, right? So that's kind of the nature of their relationship. Because we heard that by exposition in the first episode, we now are seeing that now in the third episode of how the dynamic works. And pretty much it is that Cameron does alpha dog Ethan because he knows Ethan's emotional and moral limitations, right? And Ethan, instead of being, because he has a kind of like a sense of social anxiety, like you saw him like sitting in the room, like while everybody's knocking on the door, him like hiding in the shower, he probably has a tinge of social anxiety, which means that when he was younger, 19, 20 years old, he probably wasn't the most outgoing person because he's one of those people who kind of sticks in his head, better with like mathematics and tech, and not as good with people. Cam's a people person. So instead of him, so that's what it is. So instead of Ethan deciding to work on his social anxiety and be a more people person, he just resents Cam for being who Cam is and Cam is doing for what he does. Not to say that Cam isn't off the hook, because Cam's a shitty friend, because fucking the whole fucking Lucia in Cam's room or whatever while he was there, that's what their entire college life experience was like, right? Was Cam doing all this stuff and Ethan being too shy or too not outgoing enough to do it. And I can tell you, as a person, I unfortunately was more Ethan more times in college than I was Cam. And I had a friend in college who was very much like Cam, right? So that's why I think I understand that dynamic, because it took me a long time to really be more outgoing, the more kind of like to see myself who I was, because when you're in a friendship with someone who kind of sucks up all the oxygen out the room, it's hard for you to have any breath for you to figure out who you really are. And I think that that's why I like this dynamic so much and why I found this the most interesting part of the show. Now, so, I mean, that was pretty much it. That's the whole episode. Cam and the whores kind of intersecting is our only times we see our A, B, or C storylines going on. So, that was the whole episode. I just want more, right? If you're going to hook me on with this great location, these characters, I'm going to want more, because we've got 5 more episodes to go. And unless things start ratcheting up, I'm just going to feel like, okay, Cam's going to be dead. One of the hookers going to be dead. And then we'll throw in somebody else, right? Like that, so if that's what it's going to be, then, I could have just been watching Rick and Morty the entire time. So anyway, guys, please always like this channel, subscribe, and share with your friends. And I will see you guys next week. Okay, bye.